The Galactic Council had not held an emergency session in over 2,000 years. The last time had been during the Kreth War, when the galaxy itself had seemed about to fall into chaos. Now, for only the second time in living memory, every species sent their representatives to the Great Hall of Living Crystal. High Arbiter Zelthos stood at the center of the platform. He looked older than he had before the fleet departed. His stone-gray skin had new cracks. His burning eyes seemed dimmer. The weight of his decision pressed down on him like a mountain. "I have called this session to reconsider the cleansing order," he announced. "New evidence has been presented. Evidence that demands our attention." A murmur passed through the hall. Many council members were confused. The decision had already been made. The fleet had already departed. To reverse course now would be unprecedented. Vreth, the insectoid tactical coordinator, stepped forward. "High Arbiter, the council voted overwhelmingly in favor of cleansing. The humans have shown themselves to be violent and dangerous. Nothing has changed." "Everything has changed," Zelthos replied. He played Etha's transmission for the council. All 7 hours of it. The Great Hall fell silent as thousands of beings watched humanity at its best. They saw the firefighters and the nurses and the donors. They saw the strangers who helped strangers. They saw the love that burned in human hearts. When the transmission ended, the debate began. It lasted for months. Species argued back and forth. Some believed the evidence changed nothing. Humans were still violent. Humans still had weapons. Humans still fought wars. The kindness shown in the transmission was real, but so was the cruelty. One did not cancel out the other. Others believed the opposite. Every species in the council had risen from violence. Every species had once been young and foolish. The Volanthi had nearly destroyed themselves with planet-cracking weapons. The Neth had fought civil wars that lasted centuries. Even Zelthus' own people had passed through a dark age of conquest and destruction before they found wisdom. The difference was that those species had been given time to grow. They had been allowed to make mistakes and learn from them. They had been allowed to evolve. Why should humans be any different? Counselor Etha spoke before the full council for the first time in her long life. She stood on the central platform, her small silver form dwarfed by the vast hall around her, and she spoke from her heart. "We look at humanity and we see their weapons," she said. "We see their wars. We see their hatred. And we are afraid. But we do not see what they see when they look at themselves. They see a species that is trying to be better. They see a species that falls down and gets back up. They see a species that makes terrible mistakes and then works to fix them. They are not perfect. They may never be perfect. But they are trying. And in all my centuries of watching the galaxy, I have never seen a species try so hard." She paused and looked around the hall at the thousands of faces watching her. "We have the power to destroy them," she continued. "But do we have the right? They have done nothing to us. They do not even know we exist. We would be killing them not for what they have done, but for what we fear they might do. And if we do that, we are no better than the monsters we claim to be protecting the galaxy from." The hall was silent when she finished. Then, slowly, a ripple of movement passed through the council. Beings who had voted for cleansing began to waver. Beings who had abstained began to speak in favor of mercy. The final vote came down to a single voice. High Arbiter Zelthos himself. He stood on the platform and thought about everything he had seen. The wars and the weapons. The hatred and the division. But also the love. The sacrifice. The endless, stubborn hope. "I have ordered the destruction of 3 species in my lifetime," he said quietly. "Each time I told myself it was necessary. Each time I told myself the council knew best. But I look at humanity now, and I see something I never saw in those other species. I see potential. He raised his ancient head and spoke clearly so that every being in the hall could hear. The humans are not ready to join the galactic community. They are young and foolish and dangerous. But they are also capable of extraordinary good. I believe they deserve the chance to prove themselves. I vote against the cleansing. The motion failed. By a margin of just 12 votes, humanity was allowed to live. The cleansing fleet turned around and returned home. The 17 warships that had been built to destroy a world instead became part of a new mission. They would watch Earth from a distance. They would protect it from other threats. And they would wait to see what humanity might become. Back on Earth, nothing changed. The humans never knew how close they had come to extinction. They never knew that their small kindnesses had echoed across the stars and touched the hearts of beings they could not imagine. Danny Ortiz continued working at his observatory in New Mexico. He still searched the skies for signs of intelligent life. He still believed the universe was too vast to contain only humans. He just did not know that he was right. Maria Santos still brought him coffee and complained about budget cuts. She still hoped that someday they would find something out there. She just did not know that something had already found them. Jake Moreno continued running into burning buildings. Connie Blaine continued caring for the sick. Pete Dawson continued living with one kidney and no regrets. Nina Reyes continued helping strangers whenever she could. Carlos Vega continued swimming toward people who needed saving. Bobby Tran continued rebuilding his home with help from his neighbors. They all continued being human. Flawed and foolish and violent sometimes, but also kind and brave and full of love. And far away, beyond the edge of human sight, a galaxy watched them. A galaxy that had once marked them for death, now looked upon them with something rare and precious. Hope. The Council had seen thousands of species rise and fall. They had seen civilizations burn themselves to ash. They had seen the darkness that lurked in the hearts of all beings, but they had also seen Jake Moreno carrying a stranger through flames. They had seen Pete Dawson giving away part of himself. They had seen Bobby Tran smiling in the ruins of everything he owned, grateful simply to be alive. And they wondered, for the first time in ages, if perhaps the universe was not as dark as they had believed. If perhaps there was light out there waiting to grow. If perhaps the future held something better than endless caution and fear. Humanity did not know it yet. But they had been given a gift. A chance to prove that they were more than their worst moments. A chance to show the galaxy what they could become. The stars waited patiently to see what they would do with it. The news spread across council space like fire through dry grass. Humans were leaving, every single one of them. No protests, no fighting, no angry words. They simply began to pack their things and go. Commander Ryan Peters stood on the observation deck of the medical station orbiting Kethmari Prime. Below him, the planet turned slowly, its surface marked by green forests and blue oceans. He had spent 4 years here, running the hospital that served millions of Kethmari in the northern regions. 4 years of healing the sick, training local doctors, and building something he had been proud of. Now he was taking it all apart. "Sir, the Kethmari Health Minister is on the communication channel again," Lieutenant Amy Grant said from behind him. She was young, only 26, but she had proven herself 100 times over during the plague outbreak 3 years ago. "She wants to know if we can leave the medical equipment behind." Ryan almost laughed. The same minister who had called their equipment primitive and unnecessary when they first arrived. The same minister who had complained that human doctors were too aggressive in their treatments, too willing to try new things. "Tell her no," Ryan said. "We are taking everything. Every machine, every medicine, every piece of equipment down to the last bandage. She will not be happy." She should have thought about that before the vote. Amy hesitated. "Sir, There are patients in the hospital right now. Sick people who need treatment. Ryan turned to look at her. His face was tired, lined with stress and sadness. I know, and it breaks my heart. But we gave them everything, Amy. We gave them years of our lives, and they threw us out anyway. We cannot save people who do not want to be saved. The evacuation of the medical station took 2 weeks. Humans worked around the clock, carefully packing equipment that had taken years to install. HFY officials watched in silence, slowly, realizing that the humans they had dismissed were not just leaving. They were taking their knowledge with them. On the last day, a young HFY doctor approached Ryan as he prepared to board the transport ship. Her feathers were a soft gray color, and her eyes showed something that looked like shame. "I am sorry," she said quietly. "I voted to keep you here, but my voice meant nothing." Ryan looked at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small data chip. "This contains everything I know about treating the radiation sickness. Study it. Learn from it. Maybe you can save some lives after we are gone." The young doctor took the chip with trembling hands. "Why would you help us? After what we did?" "Because that is who we are," Ryan said simply. Then he turned and walked onto the transport, leaving her standing alone on the empty station. Across council space, similar scenes played out in 100 different places. On the agricultural world of Thesan 4, George Miller loaded the last of his farming equipment onto a cargo ship. He and his wife Patricia had spent 15 years turning worthless dirt into rich farmland that fed millions. They had figured out secrets of the soil that no one else could understand. They had worked under burning suns and freezing moons, never giving up, never complaining. A group of Varth overseers stood watching them pack. Their crystalline bodies caught the light of the setting sun, making them look like statues made of fire and ice. "You do not have to leave," one of them said. His voice was flat, emotionless. "We could allow some humans to stay. As workers, you could continue farming this land." George stopped what he was doing and looked at the Vorath. Then he started laughing. It was not a happy laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had finally understood a cruel joke. "As workers," he repeated. "You mean as servants, as slaves. We would pay you fairly." "No, you would pay us whatever you decided was fair, and we would have no choice but to accept." "That is not how humans live." George turned back to his work. "This land will die without us. The crops will fail. The soil will go bad. And when your people are hungry, remember this moment. Remember that we offered you partnership and you offered us chains." Patricia came to stand beside her husband. She put her hand on his arm, steadying him. "Let them go, George. They are not worth your anger." The Vorath watched in confusion as the humans finished loading their ship and flew away. They did not understand. How could anyone choose poverty and exile over comfort and security? How could anyone walk away from everything they had built? They would understand soon enough. Admiral Christina Lane coordinated the entire exodus from her command ship, the carrier New Boston. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had fought in 3 wars and negotiated peace in 2 more. Now she faced her greatest challenge, moving 300,000 humans out of council space without losing a single life. Her communication officer approached with a tablet full of reports. "Admiral, we have encountered a problem. The Serati are refusing to let our civilian transports pass through their territory." "On what grounds?" "They say we might be smuggling weapons." Christina's eyes narrowed. The Serati knew perfectly well that the transports carried nothing but families and their belongings. This was harassment, pure and simple. A final insult before the humans were gone. "Reroute the transports through Nelani space," Christina ordered. "The Nelanis still have some honor. They will let our people pass. That will add 3 weeks to the journey." "Then it adds 3 weeks." We will not give the Sarati the satisfaction of seeing us beg for passage. The evacuation continued. Day after day, week after week, human ships departed from every corner of Council space. They left behind empty homes and silent factories. They left behind gardens that would soon grow wild and schools that would never open again. They left behind friendships that had been betrayed and trust that had been broken. But they also took something with them, something the Council did not understand until it was too late. They took their skills, their knowledge, their endless capacity for solving problems and building new things. They took the spark that had made them valuable in the first place. On the border of Council space, a young pilot named Kevin Drake watched his scanner as the last convoy of refugee ships passed into human territory. Behind them, the lights of 1,000 Council worlds glittered in the darkness. "That is the last of them," his co-pilot said. "We are all out." Kevin nodded slowly. He had been born in Council space, on a station orbiting a Kethmari moon. He had never known any other home. Now he was leaving everything he had ever known behind. "Where do we go now?" his co-pilot asked. Kevin pointed forward, into the darkness beyond the border. "Out there, into the unknown. We find new worlds, build new homes, make new lives. That is what humans do. We keep moving forward." The ship turned away from Council space and flew into the darkness. Behind it, the great civilizations of the Galactic Council continued their business, confident that they had solved the human problem once and for all. They could not have been more wrong. The great chamber of the Galactic Council floated in the darkness of space, a massive station built from metals and crystals that caught the light of distant stars. Inside, 12 different alien species had gathered to decide the fate of humanity. Their representatives sat in a circle, each one looking down at the small group of humans standing in the center of the room. Ambassador Linda Hayes stood tall despite the weight of what was happening. She had served humanity for 30 years, first as a soldier, then as a diplomat. She had seen wars end and friendships begin. But today, she felt something cold settling in her chest. The alien faces around her showed no warmth, no friendship, only judgment. High Chancellor Vextari raised his 4 arms to call for silence. He was a tall creature, his skin the color of dark purple, his eyes like black pools that reflected nothing. When he spoke, his voice came through a translator device that made his words sound flat and empty. "We are here to discuss the human problem," he said. "Many of our member species have brought complaints. We will hear them now." Linda kept her face calm, but beside her, Captain Daniel Brooks clenched his fists. He was a military man, not used to standing still while others attacked his people with words. Linda gave him a small look that told him to stay quiet. This was not a battle they could win with anger. The first to speak was the Varath representative. The Varath were beings made of living crystal, their bodies sharp and angular, their voices like the sound of glass scraping against stone. "Humans spread too fast," the Varath said. "They take worlds that should belong to others. They fill space with their ships and their noise and their endless wanting." Next came the Kethmari delegate, a bird-like creature covered in bright feathers that shifted colors as she moved. "Human merchants have destroyed our trade. They sell goods cheaper than we can make them. They call this fair, but it is an attack on our way of life." One by one, the complaints came. The Sarati said humans asked too many questions about technology that was not theirs to understand. The Nelani said human soldiers were too aggressive, too willing to fight. The Dreth said human scientists experimented with things that should be left alone. Linda listened to all of it. Some of the complaints were true in small ways. Humans did expand quickly. They did compete hard in trade. They were curious about everything and afraid of very little. But none of these things were crimes. None of these things deserved punishment. When the complaints finally ended, Vextari looked down at Linda. The human ambassador may speak. Linda stepped forward. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each representative. Some looked away. Others stared back with cold hostility. Only Zarathael of the Nelani showed something like sympathy, her glowing skin flickering with what might have been sadness. "I have listened to everything said here today," Linda began, "and I must ask a simple question. What crime have we committed? We came to the stars hoping to find friends. We found you instead." A murmur went through the chamber, but Linda continued. "When the Kethmari were dying from the plague that swept their northern continent, who sent doctors and medicine? Humans did. When pirates attacked the Varth mining colonies, who sent warships to protect them? Humans did. When the Sarati and the Nelani were on the edge of war, who spent 3 years negotiating peace? Humans did." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We have fought beside you. We have traded fairly with you. We have followed every law the Council has made. And now you sit in judgment of us because we grow too fast? Because we work too hard? Because we dare to be successful?" The chamber was silent. Even Vextari seemed uncertain for a moment. But then the Varath representative spoke again, his crystalline voice cutting through the quiet. "The human speaks of past help as if it creates debt. It does not. The Council does not owe humanity anything. The question before us is simple. Do we want humans in our space or not?" "I call for the vote," Vextari announced. Linda felt Daniel tense beside her. This was. Everything humanity had built among the stars came down to this moment. The votes came one by one. The Varath voted against humanity. The Kethmari voted against. The Sarati voted against. Species after species raised their voices to cast out the humans who had helped them, traded with them, lived beside them for generations. Only 4 voted to let humanity stay. The Nelani, the Dreth, and 2 smaller species whose names most humans had never learned. "The vote is 8-4, Vextari announced. "Humanity is hereby ordered to leave all Council space within 1 standard year. All human colonies, stations, and vessels must withdraw beyond the border. No appeals will be heard. No exceptions will be made." Linda stood very still for a long moment. She had expected this, but the reality of it still hit her like a physical blow. Everything humans had built out here, all the years of work and sacrifice, swept away by a vote that took less than an hour. Daniel leaned close to her. "What do we do?" Linda turned to face the Council one last time. Her voice was steady when she spoke. "The human delegation accepts the Council's decision. We will leave your space. We will take our ships, our people, and our skills. We will go somewhere we are wanted." She paused, and something in her eyes made several of the representatives shift uncomfortably. "But remember this moment. Remember that you chose this. And when the day comes that you realize what you have done, do not expect us to come back." Without waiting for a response, Linda turned and walked out of the chamber. Daniel followed, along with the rest of the human delegation. The doors closed behind them with a sound that echoed through the silent hall. High Chancellor Vextari watched them go. For just a moment, something flickered in his dark eyes. Something that might have been doubt. But he pushed it away and turned to address the remaining representatives. "The matter is settled. Let us move on to other business." But the chamber felt different somehow, emptier, as if something important had just walked out the door, and none of them quite understood what they had lost. In the corridor outside, Linda stopped and took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking slightly, but her voice was calm when she spoke to Daniel. "Contact every human ship in Council space. Every colony, every station, every outpost. Tell them we are leaving. All of them? All of them. We are going home, Daniel. And then we are going to find somewhere new. Somewhere better." Daniel nodded slowly. And what about them? The council? Linda looked back at the closed doors of the chamber. They made their choice. Now they will have to live with it. She walked away without looking back, leaving the Galactic Council to celebrate their victory. A victory that would soon taste like ashes in their mouths. 3 months after the last human ship crossed the border, the problems began. Chancellor Vex Thari sat alone in his private office, staring at the reports that covered his desk. Each one brought worse news than the last. Each one told a story of something breaking, something failing, something falling apart. And each one had the same cause, though no one wanted to say it out loud. The humans were gone, and the galaxy was starting to fall apart without them. The first crisis came from Kathmari Prime. The plague that human doctors had contained for years was spreading again. Without the treatments and medicines that Ryan Peters and his team had provided, the sickness was killing thousands every week. The Kathmari had their own doctors, but they had never learned how to make the special medicines. They had never bothered to study the human techniques. They had assumed the humans would always be there to help Dot. Now the hospitals were overflowing. Families watched their loved ones die from a disease that had been controlled just months before. The Kathmari health minister, the same one who had complained about human doctors, now sent desperate messages to the council begging for help. But there was no help to give. The knowledge had walked away, and it was not coming back. How bad is it? Vex Thari asked his chief advisor, a thin creature named Srel, who had served him for decades. Very bad, Srel admitted. The death toll is already in the hundreds of thousands. By next year, it could reach millions. The Kathmari are panicking. Can we not find a cure ourselves? Our scientists are working on it, but they say it could take years. The humans spent a decade developing their treatments. We do not have that kind of time. The second crisis came from the trade routes. Human merchant ships had connected every corner of council space. They had carried goods between species that refused to deal with each other directly. They had kept the economy moving, flowing, growing. Without them, everything ground to a halt. The Varath had minerals that the Serati needed for their technology. The Serati had food that the Dreth could not grow on their frozen world. The Dreth had medicines that the Nelani required for their health. But none of them would trade directly with each other. Old hatreds ran too deep. Old wounds still bled. Human merchants had been the bridge between all of them. Neutral parties who traded fairly with everyone, who held no grudges and played no favorites. Now that bridge was gone, and the old enemies were staring at each other across the gap. The Varath economy is collapsing, Srel reported. They cannot sell their minerals without human traders. Their factories are shutting down. Their people are losing jobs. What about the Serati? The Dreth? The same. Everyone is suffering. The only ones doing well are the species who voted against the resolution. The Nelani have established their own trade network with some of the smaller species. They are surviving. Vex Thari slammed his fist against his desk, a rare show of emotion for a being of his species. This is not possible. The humans were only one species among many. How can their absence cause so much damage? Srel was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was careful. Perhaps we underestimated them. Perhaps they were doing more than we realized. The third crisis came from the borders. Human patrol ships had kept the shipping lanes safe for generations. They had hunted pirates, protected convoys, and maintained order in the lawless regions between civilized systems. Other species had warships, but none had the will to use them the way humans did. The Varath considered such work beneath them. The Kathmari were afraid of conflict. The Serati only protected their own territory. With the humans gone, the pirates came back. Raider fleets that had been driven away decades ago returned to their old hunting grounds. They attacked merchant ships. They raided colonies. They grew bolder every day, because they knew that no one was coming to stop them. The outer regions are falling into chaos, Srel said. Pirate attacks have increased by a factor of 10. Several colonies have been completely destroyed. The survivors are fleeing toward the core systems, but there is not enough room for all of them. Send a fleet to restore order, Vexthari commanded. Which fleet? The Varath will not risk their ships. The Kethmari have no military to speak of. The Sarati say it is not their problem. Everyone is waiting for someone else to act. Then who will protect the border? Srel said nothing. The answer was obvious. No one would. No one except the humans had ever been willing to sacrifice their own safety for the good of others. And the humans were gone far from council space. In the darkness beyond the borders, humanity was building something new. Captain Samuel Price stood on the bridge of the colony ship Endeavor, looking at the planet that filled his view screen. It was a beautiful world, blue and green, with white clouds drifting across its surface. The scanners said it had clean water, breathable air, and rich soil. A perfect place to start over. How many worlds does that make? His first officer, Lieutenant Karen Bell, asked. 7 in this system alone. And our scout ships have found 3 more systems within easy travel distance. All of them empty. All of them waiting for us. Karen shook her head in wonder. The council said the outer regions were dangerous. They said nothing could survive out here. They lied, or they were wrong. Either way, it does not matter now. Samuel turned to face his crew, men and women who had lost their homes but not their hope. Contact the fleet. Tell them we have found our new home. The Terran Confederacy begins here. The message went out, carried by fast ships to every corner of the human exodus. Colony after colony received the news. A new beginning, a fresh start, a place where humanity could grow without asking permission from anyone. Back in council space, Zarathil of the Nelani requested an emergency meeting with the High Chancellor. She had been warning him for months that the human expulsion was a mistake. Now she had proof. You have to see what is happening, she said, her glowing skin pulsing with urgency. Trade is collapsing. Disease is spreading. Pirates are raiding. Everything the humans helped us build is falling apart. These are temporary problems, Vexthari insisted. We will adapt. We will find new solutions. What solutions? Our scientists cannot cure the plague. Our merchants cannot agree to trade. Our warriors will not fight the pirates. The humans did all of these things for us, and we threw them away like garbage. They will come back, Vexthari said confidently. The outer regions are harsh and unforgiving. They will struggle, they will suffer, and eventually they will return to us begging for help. When they do, we will accept them back on our terms. Zarathil stared at him for a long moment. Then she stood and walked toward the door. You do not understand humans at all, she said quietly. They do not beg. They do not give up. They do not come crawling back to those who hurt them. They move forward. They build new things. They survive. She paused at the door and looked back at him one last time. You think they need us, but we needed them, and we were too proud to see it. Now they are gone, and we have nothing left but our pride. I hope it keeps us warm when everything else falls apart. She left the room, leaving Vexthari alone with his reports and his slowly growing fear. For the first time since the vote, he wondered if he had made a terrible mistake, but it was too late to wonder. The damage was done, and the worst was yet to come. 1 year had passed since the humans left council space. 1 year of slow collapse, growing fear, and bitter regret. High Chancellor Vexthari no longer sat tall and proud in his chair. His purple skin had grown pale and thin. His forearms trembled when he raised them. The weight of his failure was crushing him, day by day, hour by hour. The reports on his desk told a story of disaster. The Kathmari plague had killed 2 million people and showed no signs of stopping. The Varith economy had collapsed completely, leaving billions without work or hope. Pirates controlled half the outer territories, and no one had the strength to fight them. 3 species had already left the council, seeking better futures elsewhere and everywhere, in every corner of council space. People whispered the same words. We should never have let the humans go. High Chancellor, Srel said nervously, the council demands answers. They want to know what you plan to do. What can I do? Vexthari's voice was hollow, empty. We cannot undo the vote. We cannot bring back the dead. We cannot rebuild what we destroyed. Then perhaps we should ask the humans to return. Vexthari looked up sharply. Ask? You mean beg? Call it what you will. We need them. We always needed them. We were simply too blind to see it. For a long moment, the High Chancellor was silent. His pride fought against his fear, his arrogance against his desperation. In the end, desperation won. Send an envoy, he said quietly. Find the humans. Ask them to come back. The envoy ship left council space 2 days later. It was a small vessel, carrying only a single representative, a Varith named Crixel, who had been chosen because he had never personally voted against the humans. He was supposed to be neutral, acceptable, non-threatening. The journey took 2 weeks. Crixel had expected to find the humans struggling in some forgotten corner of space, barely surviving in harsh conditions. Instead, his scanners showed him something that made his crystalline heart sink. Ships. Hundreds of them. Thousands of them. Human vessels of every size and shape, moving through space with purpose and confidence. Stations hung in orbit around a dozen worlds, bright with lights and activity. On the planet's surfaces below, cities were growing, fields were green with crops, and factories hummed with production. The humans had not merely survived. They had thrived. Attention, unknown vessel. The voice came through Crixel's communication system, clear and strong. You are entering Terran Confederacy territory. Identify yourself and state your purpose. Crixel transmitted the Council's official seal and request. Then he waited. The response came after several minutes. Envoy vessel, you are cleared to proceed to Station Hope. You will be met by our representatives. Do not deviate from the assigned course. Crixel followed the instructions carefully. As he flew deeper into human space, he saw more and more evidence of what the humans had built. Mining operations on asteroid belts, research stations orbiting gas giants, patrol ships keeping order in the shipping lanes. Everything the Council had lost was here, rebuilt bigger and better than before. Station Hope was a massive structure orbiting a blue-green world that the humans called New Earth. Crixel docked his ship and was met by a small group of human officials. They were polite but cold, professional but distant. I am here to deliver a message from the Galactic Council, Crixel said formally. We wish to discuss the possibility of humanity returning to Council space. The lead official, a tall woman with silver hair, nodded slowly. We will hear your message. Follow me. They led him through the station to a conference room where more humans waited. Crixel recognized some of them from the old days. Linda Hayes, the ambassador who had stood so calmly while the Council cast their species out. Daniel Brooks, the military officer who had organized the evacuation. Christina Lane, the admiral who had moved an entire people across the stars without losing a single ship. They all looked older now, harder, but they also looked strong, confident, like people who had faced the worst and come out the other side. Speak your message, Linda said. Crixel transmitted the official document to the room's display system. The words appeared in glowing letters, formal and precise. The Galactic Council acknowledged past difficulties. The council recognized the value of human contributions. The council invited humanity to return to its former position, with certain rights and privileges restored. When the message finished, the room was silent. Then Daniel Brooks started laughing. It was not a kind laugh. It was the laugh of a man who had heard a bad joke told by someone who did not understand why it was not funny. "They want us back," he said, shaking his head. "After everything they did, they want us back." "The council has realized its mistake," Crixel said carefully. "They wish to make things right." "Make things right?" Linda's voice was quiet but sharp like a knife. "Can they bring back the people who died in the evacuation? Can they restore the years we spent building lives that they destroyed with a single vote? Can they give us back the friends we lost, the homes we abandoned, the futures we had to rebuild from nothing?" Crixel had no answer. "We have built something new here," Linda continued. "Something better. The Terran Confederacy has 23 colony worlds, 100 stations, and a population that grows stronger every day. We have everything we need. We do not need the council. But the council needs you," Crixel admitted. His crystalline voice was low, almost pleading. "We are falling apart without you. The plague, the pirates, the economic collapse. Everything is breaking. Only the humans can fix it." Linda looked at him for a long moment. Something flickered in her eyes. It might have been pity. It might have been satisfaction. It was hard to tell. "That is not our problem anymore," she said finally. "You made your choice. Now live with it." "Please," Crixel said. "I was not part of the vote. Many of us were against it. Surely you cannot blame all of us for the actions of a few." "We do not blame you." Admiral Lane spoke for the first time. "We do not blame anyone. That is not who we are. But we also cannot forget. We cannot pretend that the past did not happen. We cannot go back to a place where we were always one vote away from being thrown out again." The meeting lasted another hour, but the outcome was never in doubt. The humans listened politely to everything Crixel said. They acknowledged the council's difficulties. They expressed sympathy for the suffering that was happening, but they refused to return. The official response came from President Maria Santos, the elected leader of the Terran Confederacy. She was a small woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice, but her words were firm and final. "We have received the council's invitation and considered it carefully. Our answer is no. We have built a new home here, a place where we are valued and respected. We will not return to a house that showed us the door. However, we remain open to trade negotiations and diplomatic relations. We wish the council well in solving its problems. We simply will not solve them for you." Crixel returned to council space with the response. When he delivered it to High Chancellor Vestari, the old leader seemed to age 10 years in a single moment. "They refused," he whispered. "They actually refused. Yes, and there is something else." Crixel hesitated. "I saw what they have built. It is impressive. More than impressive. Given time, they will become more powerful than the council ever was. If we ever have to face them as enemies rather than friends." He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. Vextari understood. The humans were not just surviving without the council. They were growing stronger. And every day that passed, the gap between them widened. The council had not just lost valuable allies. They had created potential rivals. And they had no one to blame but themselves. In the silence of his office, surrounded by reports of disaster and collapse, High Chancellor Vextari finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of what he had done. The pride that had driven him to support the resolution crumbled to dust. The confidence that had made him dismiss Zarathal's warnings turned to ash in his mouth. He had destroyed the greatest alliance in galactic history, and there was no way to undo it.